The text message arrived at 2:47 a.m. while I was changing. Ethan's fever-soaked pajamas for the third time that night. Emma was finally asleep in the next bed over, her little chest rising and falling with the labored breathing that comes with a double ear infection. Both twins had been sick for 4 days straight, and Rebecca hadn't come home once to help. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The blue glow of my phone screen illuminated words that would shatter what remained of my 7-year marriage. David, I can't pretend anymore. Jake and I are flying to Cabo tomorrow. The kids will be fine with you for a week. Need this time to figure things out. My hands trembled as I read the message. Again, Ethan's burning forehead pressed against my shoulder. Figure things out? The only thing I needed to figure out was how to explain to 2 sick 5-year-olds why Mommy had disappeared again. This wasn't the first time Rebecca had vanished during a family crisis. But it was the first time she'd been bold enough to announce. She was doing it with another man. Jake Thompson. Even his name tasted bitter in my mouth. Rebecca's high school sweetheart, who'd waltzed back into Austin 6 months ago, fresh off a messy divorce and armed with enough charm and money to make my wife forget she had a family. I'd known something was wrong when Rebecca started working. Late every night when she suddenly needed new clothes for client meetings. When she stopped looking me in the eye, when she kissed me goodbye, I should have confronted her sooner. Should have demanded the truth when I found the hotel receipts in her purse. When I noticed the expensive jewelry that definitely didn't come from my auto shop earnings. When she started calling me controlling for asking where she'd been. But I'd been too busy keeping our 3 repair shops running and raising our twins to face the obvious reality staring me in the face. Ethan whimpered against my chest, and I realized I'd been standing frozen in their bedroom for 10 minutes, staring at that message. I tucked him back into bed, pulled the covers up to his chin, and whispered a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. Daddy's going to make everything okay, mijo. The house felt impossibly quiet as I walked to the kitchen. 7 years of marriage, and this was what it had come down to. Rebecca choosing her high school fantasy over the family we'd built together. I thought about calling her, demanding she come home immediately, but what was the point? She'd made her choice, and apparently Jake's Ocean View suite in Cabo was more appealing than 2 sick children who needed their mother. I made coffee with shaking hands and sat at our kitchen table, surrounded by the chaos of single parenting. Sippy cups in the sink, children's medicine bottles lined up on the counter, coloring books scattered across the floor. This had been my reality for months, while Rebecca played house with her first love. The difference was that now I knew the truth. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Rebecca. Don't be dramatic about this. They're just kids, they'll adapt. You're good with them anyway. Maybe this is better for everyone. Just kids, they'll adapt. I stared at those words until they blurred together. Emma and Ethan weren't just inconvenient obstacles to Rebecca's romantic reunion. They were human beings who called for Mommy every night, who saved their best artwork for her, who still believed she was coming home. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that Mommy values her teenage memories more than their bedtime stories? I walked to the living room and looked at the family photos covering our mantel. Rebecca and me on our wedding day. Her in that beautiful white dress. Both of us so young and full of hope. The twins' first steps, first birthdays, first day of kindergarten. 7 years of memories that apparently meant nothing compared to whatever Jake was offering her in Mexico. The irony wasn't lost on me. Rebecca had always complained that I worked too much, that I was too focused on building the business to pay attention to her needs. But every 16-hour day I spent at the shop, every weekend I sacrificed, every penny I saved, was for this family. For the house in Cedar Park with the good schools. For the college funds I'd been building since the twins were born. For the security that my own immigrant parents never had. My parents had come to America from the Philippines with nothing but hope and work ethic. They'd taught me that family comes first, that you sacrifice for the people you love, that success means nothing if you don't have people to share it with. Rebecca used to admire those values. She'd even learned basic Tagalog to communicate with my grandmother before she passed. When had caring about family become a character flaw? As dawn broke over Austin, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to beg Rebecca to come home. I wasn't going to compete with Jake's flashy lifestyle or play games to win back a woman who'd already checked out of our marriage. Instead, I was going to focus on the people who actually mattered, Emma and Ethan. But first, I needed to make a phone call. Patricia Martinez had always been more of a mother to me than a mother-in-law. While Rebecca criticized my long hours and practical approach to life, Patricia understood the immigrant work ethic that drove me. As a single mother, working double shifts as a school custodian to keep food on the table and clothes on her daughter's back, she knew what real sacrifice looked like. David. Patricia's voice was groggy with sleep when she answered. What's wrong? Wait. Are the babies okay? The twins are sick, but they'll be fine, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Patricia, I need to tell you something about Rebecca. The silence stretched between us as I explained about the affair. The trip to Cabo, the text messages that showed how little Rebecca cared about her own children. Patricia's breathing grew heavier with each detail, and by the time I finished, I could hear her crying. Dios mío, she whispered. How could she do this? Those poor babies. You must be so hurt, David. More angry than hurt, I admitted. But Patricia, I need you to know something else. This doesn't change how I feel about you. You're still my family, and the twins need their abuela now, more than ever. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. David, you're a good man. Too good. For my daughter, apparently? What are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? I could file for divorce immediately, fight for full custody, try to protect the twins from the chaos Rebecca was about to bring into their lives, or I could wait, see if she came to her senses, give her one more chance to choose her family over. Her fantasy. But as I stood in my kitchen, looking at the evidence of single parenthood scattered around me, I realized I'd already been raising the twins alone for months. Rebecca's physical presence had been sporadic at best, her emotional presence non-existent. The twins had adapted to Daddy being the one who made breakfast, packed lunches, read bedtime stories, and administered medicine at 3 a.m. Maybe she was right about one thing. This might be better for everyone. I'm going to take care of my children, I told Patricia, and I'm going to make sure Rebecca faces the consequences of her choices. When I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Clarity. Rebecca thought she could abandon her family without repercussions. That I'd just accept her decision and fade into the background while she played house with Jake. She thought I was just a simple mechanic who'd be grateful for whatever scraps of attention she threw my way. She had no idea what I was capable of when my children were threatened. The twins woke up around 7, their fevers finally broken but still groggy from 4 days of illness. Emma stumbled into the kitchen in her princess pajamas, her dark hair a tangled mess, looking around with confused eyes. Where's Mommy? She asked, the question I'd been dreading. Mommy had to go on a work trip, I said, hating myself for the lie, but knowing she was too young for the truth. But Daddy's here, and we're going to have fun together. Ethan appeared a moment later, dragging his stuffed dinosaur behind him. Is Mommy coming back today? Not today, buddy. But we're going to make pancakes, and maybe later we can call Abuela Patricia. The mention of their grandmother brightened both their faces. Patricia had been a constant in their lives while Rebecca drifted in and out like a part-time babysitter. She was the one who taught them Spanish nursery rhymes, who made them traditional Mexican hot chocolate when they were sick, who never missed a school play or soccer game. As I mixed pancake batter and listened to the twins chatter about their dreams, I thought about Rebecca lounging on a beach with Jake, probably posting pictures to social media while her children ate breakfast without her. She'd always been obsessed with appearances, with showing the world how perfect her life was. What would her followers think if they knew the truth behind those glamorous vacation photos? My phone rang while the twins were eating. Maria Santos, Rebecca's oldest friend, the one person who tried to warn me about what was happening. David, I saw Rebecca's Instagram story, Maria said without preamble. She's in Cabo with Jake, isn't she? The twins don't know, I said quietly, stepping into the hallway where they couldn't hear me. This is insane, those poor babies. David, I need to tell you something. Ashley Rodriguez has been encouraging this whole thing. She's been telling Rebecca that she deserves to be happy, that you're holding her back, that the twins will be fine without her. I tried to talk sense into Rebecca, but Ashley keeps filling her head with this nonsense about following her heart. Rebecca's new friend from the marketing firm, a recently divorced woman, who seemed to view marriage as a temporary inconvenience. I'd never liked her influence on Rebecca. The way she encouraged late nights out and girls' trips while I stayed home with the twins. What else do you know? I asked. Jake's been promising Rebecca a whole new life. Trips to Europe, a condo in downtown Austin, no responsibilities. He's basically offering her a chance to be 22 again, and she's eating it up. What? But David, you need to know something else. Jake's not as wealthy as he pretends to be. His real estate company is in trouble. My husband works in commercial lending, and he says Jake's been leveraging everything to maintain his lifestyle. This was interesting information, but it didn't change the fundamental problem. Rebecca had chosen Jake over her children, regardless of his financial situation. She'd abandoned Emma and Ethan during one of their worst illnesses to play house with a man she dated in high school. After I hung up with Maria, I made another decision. Called my business partner Tom and told him I needed to take a few days off to handle family issues. Tom had been my friend since college, one of the few people who knew how unhappy Rebecca had been lately. Take all the time you need, Tom said. The shops can run without you for a while. How are the kids handling this? They don't really understand what's happening yet, I admitted, but they will soon enough. The next few hours passed in a blur of children's television, medicine doses, and phone calls from well-meaning relatives who'd heard the news. Patricia came over around noon with a pot of chicken soup and tears in her eyes. She held Emma and Ethan like they were the most precious things in the world, whispering Spanish endearments and promising to help Daddy take care of them. That daughter of mine, Patricia muttered as we watched the twins play in the backyard. I raised her better than this. Her father walked out when she was 10, and I swore I'd never let a man hurt my family again. But here she is, doing the same thing to her own children. The twins are lucky to have you, I said. Rebecca might have given up on being their mother, but they still have their abuela. Patricia wiped her eyes and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. David, I need you to know something. If Rebecca thinks she can just waltz back here whenever she gets tired of playing house with that man, she's wrong. Those babies need stability, not a mother who treats them like an inconvenience. What are you saying? I'm saying that if you need me to testify about what kind of mother Rebecca has been lately, I will. If you need me to help you get full custody, I will. My daughter made her choice, and now she has to live with the consequences. The weight of Patricia's words settled over me like a warm blanket. Rebecca's own mother was willing to stand against her to protect Emma and Ethan. That spoke volumes about how far Rebecca had fallen from the woman I'd married. That evening, after the twins were finally asleep, I sat in my home office and started making lists. Phone numbers for divorce attorneys. Documentation of Rebecca's absences over the past 6 months. Bank records showing my consistent financial support while she spent money on clothes and dinners I knew nothing about. Screenshots of her social media posts that would show a jury exactly where her priorities lay. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was strategic. Rebecca thought she could abandon her family and face no consequences. She thought I'd be waiting patiently whenever she decided to come home, grateful for whatever attention she was willing to give. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. She thought being a mother was optional, something she could turn on and off depending on her mood. She was about to learn how wrong she was about everything. The custody hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later, but Rebecca's world began unraveling much faster than that. Within 2 days of returning from Cabo, her carefully constructed fantasy started colliding with reality in ways that even she couldn't ignore or rationalize away. The first crack appeared when Jake didn't answer her calls for an entire day. Rebecca spent Monday pacing around Ashley's apartment, where she'd been staying since I'd asked her to leave the house, calling Jake repeatedly and growing more frantic with each hour of silence. When he finally called back Tuesday morning, his tone was completely different from the romantic partner who'd whispered sweet promises over champagne sunsets. "Rebecca, we need to talk," Jake said, and I knew because Rebecca immediately called. Me afterward, desperate to vent her frustration to someone who would understand the magnitude of her crisis. "He's having second thoughts," she told me, her voice shaking with a mixture of anger and panic. "He says coming back to Austin has given him perspective on our situation. He's worried about the complexity of dating a married woman with children. Can you believe that? He knew I was married when he started pursuing me." I could believe it, actually. Jake had gotten exactly what he'd wanted from Rebecca: validation, excitement, and a week of consequence-free romance. Now that she was available and expecting him to follow through on his promises of a future together, the reality of what that would actually entail was probably hitting him hard. Taking on a woman in the middle of a messy divorce, complete with custody battles and angry ex-husbands, wasn't nearly as appealing as sneaking around with someone else's wife. "What exactly did he say?" I asked, more curious than sympathetic. "He said he needs time to think about whether he's ready for the responsibility of being involved with someone who has children. Time to think. After everything I've sacrificed. After I left my family for him, he needs time to think about whether I'm worth the trouble." The irony was stunning. Rebecca had abandoned Emma and Ethan because Jake had convinced her they could have a life together. And now Jake was abandoning her because he'd realized that life included the very children she'd sacrificed for him. The man who'd seemed so understanding about her need to prioritize. Her own happiness was balking at the practical implications of what that happiness would actually cost. "Maybe he's realizing that real relationships involve more than romantic getaways," I suggested. "Don't you dare take his side in this, David. You should be happy. Your plan to destroy my relationship is working perfectly." My plan. As if I'd somehow orchestrated Jake's change of heart. As if I'd forced him to pursue a married mother and then abandon her when the situation became complicated. Rebecca's capacity for avoiding responsibility for her own choices continued to amaze me. "Rebecca, I didn't have to destroy your relationship with Jake. It was always going to self-destruct, because it was built on fantasy rather than reality. He wanted the excitement of an affair, not the complexity of an actual partnership." The conversation ended with Rebecca hanging up on me, but it wasn't the last I'd hear about Jake's retreat. Over the next few days, as Rebecca's desperation grew, she made increasingly poor decisions that only strengthened my custody case. First, she showed up at Jake's real estate office uninvited, demanding to know why he was pulling away after everything they'd shared. The confrontation was loud enough that his colleagues overheard, and word spread quickly through Austin's tight-knit business community. Jake Thompson, the successful developer, was having messy personal drama with a married woman who was stalking him at work. And then she started calling him at all hours, leaving voicemail messages that grew progressively more unhinged as his silence continued. Messages where she alternated between begging him to reconsider and threatening to tell his business partners about their affair if he didn't start returning her calls. The final straw came when Rebecca drove to Jake's downtown condo and created a scene in the lobby when the doorman wouldn't let her upstairs. She screamed about being abandoned by another man, about sacrificing everything for someone who'd turned out to be a coward, about how all men were liars who used women and threw them away. The building's security cameras captured every moment of her breakdown, and by the next day, Jake had filed a restraining order against her. Ashley called me Wednesday evening, her voice tight with stress. "David, you need to do something about Rebecca. She's completely out of control." She done now? "She's been staying with me since Sunday, and she's making my life hell. She's drinking too much, crying constantly, calling Jake obsessively, and when she's not doing that, she's plotting elaborate schemes to win him back. Yesterday, she wanted me to help her accidentally run into him at his gym. Today, she's talking about showing up at his business dinner tomorrow night to make him realize what he's losing." Ashley's voice dropped to a whisper. "David, I think I made a mistake encouraging her to pursue Jake. I thought she was just unhappy in her marriage and deserved a chance at love, but this isn't love. This is obsession. She's not the same person I befriended at work." It was interesting to hear Ashley backpedaling now that Rebecca's choices had led to consequences that affected her directly. When Rebecca was just cheating on her husband and neglecting her children, Ashley had been a cheerleader for female empowerment and following your heart. Now that Rebecca's breakdown was happening in her living room, disturbing her sleep and threatening her reputation, Suddenly she was concerned about the wisdom of the advice she'd been giving. "What do you want me to do about it?" I asked. "Take her back. Work things out. Go to counseling. I don't care what you do, but she can't stay here anymore. She's scaring me, David. Last night she was drunk and talking about how maybe she should just disappear entirely. It's how everyone would be better off without her. That's not normal breakup talk." The concern in Ashley's voice was genuine, and despite everything Rebecca had done, I felt a flicker of worry for the woman I'd once loved. But concern for Rebecca's mental state didn't override my primary responsibility. To protect Emma and Ethan from the chaos she was creating, Rebecca made her choices. She chose Jake over her family, and now she has to live with the consequences of that choice. I'm not going to rescue her from a situation she created just because it's inconvenient for you. But what about the kids? Don't they need their mother? The kids need stability and consistency. Right now, Rebecca is in no condition to provide either of those things. Maybe someday she'll get her life together and be able to be a proper mother to them, but that day isn't today. Thursday morning brought news that changed everything. Maria called with information that she'd gotten from her husband's banking connections, the same network that had warned her about Jake's financial situation weeks earlier. "David, you're not going to believe this. Jake's company is in serious trouble. He's been using investor money to fund his lifestyle, and there's going to be an investigation. My husband thinks he might be looking at fraud charges." The pieces clicked into place immediately. Jake's sudden retreat from Rebecca, his reluctance to take on the complexity of her situation, his decision to file a restraining order rather than simply breaking up with her like a normal person. He wasn't just having second thoughts about their relationship. He was preparing for his entire life to implode, and the last thing he needed was a volatile ex-mistress who could damage his reputation further. "How serious are we talking?" asked. "Serious enough that he'll probably have to liquidate everything to pay back investors. The condo, the cars, the whole lifestyle that impressed Rebecca so much. It's all going to disappear." I thought about Rebecca's Instagram posts from Cabo, her captions about deserving luxury and adventure, her obvious excitement about Jake's wealth and the lifestyle he'd promised her. She'd given up her family for a man who was about to lose everything she'd found attractive about him. "Maria, I need you to document everything you can about Jake's financial situation. If Rebecca tries to argue that she should have custody so the kids can benefit from Jake's wealth, I want to be able to show the court exactly what that wealth is worth." Already on it. "My husband is putting together a complete financial profile. David, when this comes out, Rebecca is going to be devastated. She gave up everything for a mirage." That afternoon, Patricia brought Emma and Ethan to visit me at the auto shop. They loved coming to see Daddy's work, climbing on the equipment, and pretending to fix cars alongside my mechanics. Watching them play in the safety of my workplace, surrounded by people who'd known them since they were babies, I felt a deep sense of rightness about the path I'd chosen. "Daddy, when is Mommy coming to live with us again?" Emma asked as I helped her tighten a wrench on a tire that was already perfectly secured. "I don't know, sweetheart. Mommy is figuring some things out right now. Is she still sad?" Ethan asked from where he was pretending to check the oil in a pickup truck. "She's working through some feelings, buddy. Debt, but that's not your job to worry about. Your job is to be kids and let the grown-ups handle the grown-up problems. Patricia, watch them play with an expression of mixed love and sadness. They're so resilient," she said quietly. The news about Jake's financial collapse hit Rebecca like a freight train on Friday morning. She showed up at my office unannounced, her hair unwashed and her clothes wrinkled, looking like she hadn't slept in days. My secretary tried to stop her, but Rebecca pushed past into my private office where I was reviewing quarterly reports for the shops. "Did you know?" she demanded, her voice raw from crying. "No. Did you know about Jake's company when you filed for divorce?" I looked up from my paperwork, taking in her disheveled appearance and wild eyes. This wasn't the polished, confident woman who'd swept through our front door less than a week ago, glowing with romantic satisfaction. This was someone whose entire world had crumbled in the space of a few days. "Know about what specifically?" I asked, though I had a pretty good idea what had finally reached her ears. "The investigation. the fraud charges. The fact that everything he owns is about to be seized by federal agents. His condo, his cars, his business, everything I thought we were going to build together. It's all fake, David. All of it. Collapsed into the chair across from my desk, her carefully constructed composure finally shattered completely. I gave up my family for a man who doesn't even exist. The Jake I fell in love with was just an illusion built on stolen money and lies. I set down my pen and really looked at her. Despite everything she'd done, despite the pain she'd caused, Emma and Ethan, I felt a flicker of the compassion that had made me fall in love with her years ago. She looked broken in a way that went beyond simple heartbreak, broken in a way that comes from realizing you've destroyed something real for something that was never there at all. When did you find out? I asked. This morning. Jake called me for the first time in 3 days, not to apologize or explain why he's been avoiding me, but to warn me that reporters might start asking questions about our relationship. Apparently his investors are looking into how he spent their money, and expensive trips to Mexico with married women don't look good in fraud investigations. She laughed bitterly. He actually asked me to deny that we were romantically involved if anyone asks. Said it would be better for both of us if people thought we were just old friends who happened to vacation together. After everything I sacrificed. For him, he wants me to pretend our relationship never existed. The final humiliation. Jake wasn't just abandoning Rebecca. He was asking her to erase their entire affair to protect himself from further legal complications. The grand romance that had convinced her to leave her family was now something he needed her to publicly deny. Rebecca, I'm sorry this happened to you, but I don't know what you want me to do about it. I want my life back, she said desperately. I want to undo the last 6 months, to take back every stupid decision I made. I want to come home to you and the kids and pretend none of this ever happened. There it was. The request I'd been expecting since the moment Jake started pulling away from her. Rebecca wanted to reset the clock. To return to the safety and stability she'd abandoned when something shinier had caught her attention. She wanted me to be her backup plan, the reliable husband she could return to when her adventure went wrong. That's not how this works, Rebecca. Can't destroy a family and then expect to rebuild it when your other options disappear. But we loved each other once. We were happy. Can be happy again if we both try. I looked at this woman I'd shared 7 years of my life with, the mother of my children, the person I'd thought I'd grow old with. There had been love once, real and deep and lasting. But that love had died slowly over months of neglect, betrayal, and abandonment. You can't resurrect something that's been systematically destroyed, Rebecca. Even if I wanted to try again, which I don't, you haven't. Learned anything from what happened? You're not here because you realized you made a mistake, or because you miss our family. You're here because Jake turned out to be a fraud and Ashley kicked you out of her apartment. You're looking for shelter, not reconciliation. True. I've realized how much I need you, how much the kids need me. We're a family, David. That has to count for something. We were a family. But families don't survive when one person decides the other members are expendable. You didn't just cheat on me, Rebecca. You abandoned Emma and Ethan when they were sick because spending time with Jake was more important than taking care of your children. I made mistakes, but I can change. I can be the wife and mother you need me to be. The conversation was interrupted by my phone ringing. Patricia's name appeared on the caller ID, and I answered immediately. Patricia never called during work hours unless something was wrong with the twins. David, you need to come to the school right now, Patricia said, her voice tight with controlled anger. There's been an incident with Rebecca. I felt my blood run cold. What kind of incident? Are the kids okay? The kids are fine, but Rebecca showed up at their school, trying to check them out early. She told the office she was taking them for ice cream, but Emma started crying and saying she wanted to wait for Daddy. When the principal tried to call you for permission, Rebecca became very upset and started yelling about her parental rights. I looked across my desk at Rebecca, who was listening to my side of the conversation with growing panic in her eyes. Is she still there? Security escorted her off the property, but David, she was not in good condition. Principal is concerned about her mental state. She was rambling about taking the kids somewhere safe, about protecting them from people who want to hurt their family. the school has temporarily flagged the children's accounts to require authorization from both parents for any early dismissals. After I hung up, Rebecca stared at me with defiant desperation. I just wanted to see them, wanted to spend some time with my children without you controlling every interaction. You wanted to take them somewhere without my knowledge or permission while you're in the middle of an emotional breakdown? That's not spending time with your children, Rebecca. That's kidnapping. They're my children too. I have rights. Rights that you're systematically destroying with every unstable decision you make. Do you think a family court judge is going to grant you unsupervised visitation after you tried to remove the kids from school without authorization while you're clearly in crisis? Becca's face crumpled as the reality of her situation finally penetrated her denial. Every choice she'd made in the past week had further damaged her custody case. And now she'd added potential kidnapping to the list of reasons why she shouldn't have unsupervised access to Emma and Ethan. David, please, I'm begging you, don't. Take my children away from me completely. I know I've made terrible mistakes, but I love them. They need their mother. Need a mother who puts their needs first. Right now, you're not capable of being that person. I can get help. Therapy, medication, whatever it takes. Just give me a chance to prove I can change. I studied her face, looking for any sign that this desperation came from genuine remorse rather than simple fear of consequences. What I saw was a woman who'd lost everything she thought she wanted and was now trying to hold on to the only thing she had left, not because she valued it, but because losing it would mean admitting that her choices had cost her everything. Rebecca, if you're serious about getting help, then get it. But not because you want to win back custody or because you want to rebuild our marriage. Get help because you need it. Because the person you've become over the past 6 months isn't someone who should be responsible for children's well-being. What does that mean for us? For the divorce? For custody? It means that the custody hearing will proceed as scheduled. It means that your visitation will be supervised until you can demonstrate sustained stability and genuine prioritization of the children's needs over your own wants. And it means that our marriage is over, regardless of what happens with Jake or anyone else. Rebecca sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of her losses finally settling over her. Her affair partner had abandoned her. Her mother had chosen my side over hers. Her children were being protected from her, and her husband was no longer willing to be her safety net. I don't know how to fix this, she whispered finally. By accepting responsibility for your choices, instead of looking for someone else to blame or rescue you. Jake didn't force you to abandon your family. Ashley didn't make you post about your affair on social media. I didn't make you try to take the kids from school without permission. You made all of those decisions, and now you have to live with the consequences. But what if I can't? What if I've ruined everything so badly that there's no way back? Then you'll have learned a very expensive lesson about what happens when you take the people who love you for granted. But Rebecca, Emma, and Ethan will always be your children. If you genuinely get your life together, if you prove that you can put their needs first consistently over time, then maybe someday you can have a real relationship with them again. And us? Is there any chance for us? I looked at this woman who'd shared my bed for 7 years, who'd carried my children, who'd once been my best friend and greatest love. The answer was written in every choice she'd made over the past 6 months, in every priority she'd revealed, in every value she'd demonstrated. No, Rebecca, there's no chance for us. You killed what we had when you decided that being a wife and mother wasn't enough for you. I can forgive you for the sake of our children, but I can't forget who you really are when you think no one important is watching. She left my office that day, looking smaller than when she'd arrived, the full weight of her losses finally visible in her posture. The confident woman who'd swept back from Cabo, expecting to rearrange everyone's lives to accommodate. Her new relationship was gone, replaced by someone who was finally beginning to understand the price of selfishness. The custody hearing was still 2 weeks away, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Rebecca had systematically destroyed her own case through her actions, her choices, and her complete inability to prioritize her children's needs over her own desires. The court would see exactly what I'd seen, a woman who treated motherhood as optional and marriage as disposable. But more importantly, Emma and Ethan would be safe. They would have the stability, consistency, and unconditional love that every child deserves. They would grow up knowing that at least one parent had chosen them over everything else, that their father had fought to protect them when their mother had walked away. Patricia arrived at my office an hour after Rebecca left, bringing the twins with her for our planned afternoon at the park. Emma ran to me with a picture she'd drawn at school. A crayon masterpiece showing our family of 4, but with Mommy standing far away from the rest of us. "Why did Mommy come to school today?" Emma asked as I lifted her onto my lap. She seemed sad. "Mommy is going through some difficult things right now, sweetheart, but that's not your responsibility to worry about." "Will she be okay?" Ethan asked, ever the empathetic soul. "I hope so, buddy. But right now, our job is to take care of each other and be happy together." As we headed to the park, Patricia walked beside me in comfortable silence. Finally, she spoke. "You're doing the right thing, David. Those children need at least one parent who will always choose them first. I just hope someday Rebecca understands what she gave up." "She will," Patricia said, with the certainty of a woman who'd raised a daughter and watched her make every wrong choice possible. "But by then, it will be too late to matter." The custody hearing arrived on a crisp November morning that felt like the first day of a new season in more ways than one. I sat in the courthouse hallway with my attorney Richard Walsh, watching Rebecca pace nervously near the water fountain with her hastily hired legal counsel. She'd managed to pull herself together somewhat in the 2 weeks since our confrontation. In my office, the strain was still visible in her hollow cheeks, and the way her hands shook when she thought no one was looking. Patricia sat beside me, wearing her best dress and holding a folder thick with documentation she'd compiled about Rebecca's absences over the past 6 months. Every missed school event, every canceled babysitting commitment, every time she'd had to step in because Rebecca was too busy with her new lifestyle to handle her parental responsibilities. It was damning evidence made even more powerful by the fact that it came from Rebecca's own mother. "David, I need you to understand something before we go in there," Patricia said quietly. "This isn't easy for me. No mother wants to testify against her own daughter. But Emma and Ethan didn't choose to be born, and they deserve better than what Rebecca has been giving them." The weight of Patricia's sacrifice wasn't lost on me. She was choosing her grandchildren's well-being over her relationship with her daughter, knowing full well that Rebecca might never forgive her for this betrayal. It was the kind of moral courage that I'd always admired in Patricia. The same strength that had allowed her to raise Rebecca as a single mother despite every obstacle life had thrown at them. When we were finally called into the courtroom, was struck by how sterile and formal the environment felt for a proceeding that would determine the entire future of our family. Judge Margaret Rodriguez presided with the kind of calm authority that comes from years of listening to parents argue about what's best for their children while clearly prioritizing their own needs instead. Rebecca's attorney went first, painting a picture of a devoted mother who'd made some mistakes during a difficult period in her marriage, but was now ready to recommit to her children. He glossed over the affair entirely, referring to it only as a brief separation while the parties worked through marital difficulties. He emphasized Rebecca's college education and professional success, suggesting that she was better equipped than I was to provide for the children's intellectual and cultural development. My client acknowledges that she made some poor choices during a challenging time in her marriage, her attorney concluded, but these were temporary lapses in judgment, not indications of her fundamental character as a mother. Mrs. Martinez loves her children deeply and is prepared to make whatever changes are necessary to ensure their continued well-being. It was a competent performance, but it felt hollow in the face of the evidence we were prepared to present. Rebecca's temporary lapses in judgment had lasted 6 months and culminated in her abandoning sick children for a romantic vacation. Her brief separation had been documented extensively on social media platforms that showed her priorities clearly. Richard Walsh's opening was more direct. "Your Honor, this case isn't about a marriage that didn't work out. It's about a mother who systematically abandoned her responsibilities to pursue a relationship with another man, documented that abandonment publicly, and then attempted to remove her children from school without authorization when her affair fell apart. Mr. Chen isn't trying to punish his ex-wife. He's trying to protect his children from a parent who has demonstrated that motherhood is optional for her. The evidence portion of the hearing was methodical and devastating. Richard presented the social media posts in chronological order, showing Rebecca's progression from secretive dissatisfaction to blatant celebration of her affair. The Instagram stories from Cabo were particularly damaging, showing her lounging on beaches and toasting her freedom while her children were home, sick with ear infections. When Patricia took the stand, the courtroom fell completely silent. There's something powerful about a grandmother choosing to testify against her own daughter, and Judge Rodriguez clearly understood the significance of what she was hearing. "Mrs. Martinez, this must be very difficult for you," the judge said. "Gently, yes, Your Honor, it is. But my loyalty is to those children, not to the woman who brought them into the world and then decided they were too much trouble." Patricia's testimony was precise and heartbreaking. She detailed Rebecca's increasing absences over the past 6 months, her failure to attend Emma's kindergarten graduation, her refusal to help when the twins had the flu in September, the general attitude that parenting was David's responsibility while she pursued her own interests. "Your Honor, I raised Rebecca as a single mother after her father abandoned us when she was 10 years old. I know what it looks like when a parent decides their children are expendable. I swore I would never let that happen to Emma and Ethan, even if it means standing against my own daughter." Rebecca's face crumpled as her mother spoke, but Patricia never wavered. She answered every question with devastating honesty, painting a picture of a woman who'd checked out of motherhood. Months before she'd physically left for Mexico, the most damaging moment came when Rebecca's attorney tried to suggest that Patricia was biased in my favor because I'd been financially supporting her. Patricia's response was swift and cutting. "Counselor David supports me because that's what good men do for their family members when they need help. Rebecca stopped contributing to my care months ago, when she started spending her money on clothes and dinners for her boyfriend. David stepped up because Rebecca stepped out. When Rebecca finally took the stand in her own defense, she tried to present herself as a woman who'd made mistakes but learned from them. She spoke about her love for Emma and Ethan, her regret about the choices she'd made, her commitment to being a better mother moving forward. But Richard's cross-examination was surgical in its precision. He walked her through the timeline of her affair, forcing her to acknowledge that she'd left sick children to vacation with Jake. He made her read aloud her own social media posts about choosing happiness over obligation, about deserving more. Then her suburban life, about finally being brave enough to prioritize herself. "Mrs. Martinez, in this post from October 15th, you wrote that you were finally brave enough to choose yourself over what others expected. What did you mean by that?" Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. "I meant that I was trying to find my own happiness." "And what were the expectations that you felt brave enough to reject?" I meant the expectations of marriage and motherhood. So being a mother to Emma and Ethan was an expectation you felt brave to reject?" "That's not what I meant." "But that's what you did, isn't it? You rejected the expectation that mothers should prioritize their children's needs, and you chose your own happiness with Mr. Thompson instead." Rebecca had no answer for that, because there was no answer that didn't confirm exactly what Richard was suggesting. She'd treated motherhood as a constraint on her personal fulfillment rather than a responsibility. She'd chosen when she decided to have children. The final blow came when Richard introduced evidence of Rebecca's attempt to remove the children from school without authorization. The principal's written statement described Rebecca as agitated and unstable, noting that she'd spoken about taking the children somewhere safe away from people who wanted to hurt their family. "Mrs. Martinez, when you went to Emma and Ethan's school on October 25th, what was your intention?" "I just wanted to spend time with my children." "But you didn't have permission from their father or from the school to remove them during school hours, did you?" "I'm their mother. I shouldn't need permission to see my own children." "Even when you're in the middle of an emotional crisis? Even when you're talking about taking them somewhere safe because you believe unnamed people want to hurt your family?" Rebecca's composure finally cracked completely. "I wasn't going to hurt them, would never hurt my children. I just wanted to take them for ice cream and talk to them about what was happening." "What was happening, Mrs. Martinez? What did you want to discuss with 2 5-year-old children about your adult problems?" The question hung in the air unanswered because Rebecca had no good response. The truth was that she'd been planning to burden Emma and Ethan with her emotional chaos. to use them as comfort objects during her crisis rather than protecting them from adult problems they were too young to understand. Judge Rodriguez called a brief recess before delivering her decision, and I used the time to check my phone for messages from Tom about the auto shops. Normal life felt surreal in the context of this legal proceeding that would reshape Emma and Ethan's entire childhood. But the mundane details of business ownership provided a welcome distraction from the emotional weight of the hearing. When court reconvened, Judge Rodriguez's expression was grave as she looked out at our fractured family. This is never an easy decision, but in this case, the evidence is clear. Mrs. Martinez has demonstrated a pattern of prioritizing her personal relationships over her children's needs, culminating in her abandonment of those children during a medical emergency to pursue a romantic relationship. She continued, "The court is particularly troubled by Mrs. Martinez's public documentation of her affair while her children were homesick, and by her subsequent attempt to remove them from school without authorization during an emotional crisis. These actions show a fundamental misunderstanding of what responsible parenting requires." The judge's final ruling was everything I'd hoped for and more than I'd dared to expect. Full physical custody to me, with Rebecca granted supervised visitation twice a week for 2 hours each session. The supervision would continue until Rebecca could demonstrate 6 months of stable employment, appropriate housing, and regular participation in family counseling. Furthermore, Judge Rodriguez added, "Mrs. Martinez is prohibited from introducing the children to any romantic partners without prior court approval and a gradual introduction process overseen by a family therapist. The court will not allow these children to be subjected to additional instability while their mother works through her personal issues." Rebecca sobbed openly as the judge delivered the ruling, finally understanding that her choices had cost her everything she'd claimed to value. Her attorney put a consoling hand on her shoulder, but there was nothing he could do to soften the blow of losing primary custody of her own children. As we gathered our materials and prepared to leave the courthouse, Patricia approached Rebecca. "One final time, Mia, you can still fix this," she said softly. "Not with David, that's over. But with Emma and Ethan. If you really do the work, if you really change, you can still be their mother." Rebecca looked at her own mother with hollow eyes. "How can you forgive me after what I did to them? Because I love you, and because those babies need you to become the person you were meant to be. But Rebecca, this is your last chance. You messed this up. If you hurt those children again, I will never forgive you." Walking out of the courthouse with full custody of my children, I felt a complex mixture of relief, sadness, and determination. The legal battle was over, but the real work of rebuilding our family was just beginning. Emma and Ethan would need help processing their mother's absence, understanding why their family had changed, and learning to trust that the people who remained in their lives would never abandon them. That evening, I sat in their bedroom as they went through their bedtime routine, both of them chattering about their day at school and their plans for the weekend. They seemed happier and more relaxed than they'd been in months, no longer walking on eggshells around their mother's unpredictable moods or competing with her phone for attention. "Daddy, will Mommy be able to visit us soon?" Emma asked as I tucked her in. "Yes, sweetheart. Mommy will come visit you twice a week, and maybe someday she'll be able to spend more time with you. Will she be happier then?" Ethan wondered. "I hope so, buddy. But right now, your job is just to be kids and let Daddy and Abuela Patricia take care of everything else." As I turned off their lights and closed their bedroom door, I thought about the long road ahead. Supervised visitations, family therapy, the gradual process of helping Rebecca rebuild a relationship with her children if she proved capable of change. It would be complicated and emotionally challenging. But for the first time in months, I felt hopeful about our family's future. Emma and Ethan were safe. They were loved. And they would grow up knowing that at least one parent had chosen them over everything else that might have seemed more appealing. 6 months later, life had settled into a rhythm that felt both foreign and wonderfully peaceful. Emma and Ethan thrived in their predictable routine, their laughter filling the house in ways it hadn't for over a year. Patricia had moved into the guest room permanently, becoming the steady maternal presence that Rebecca had never managed to be consistently. The supervised visits with Rebecca had been sporadic at best. She'd managed to show up for the first, Few sessions, sitting awkwardly in the family services office while a social worker observed her interactions with Emma and Ethan. The children were polite but distant, treating her more like a friendly stranger than their mother. The easy intimacy that should exist between parent and child had been severed by months of inconsistency and abandonment. Rebecca had tried to win them back with gifts and promises, but 5-year-olds are remarkably perceptive about authenticity. They could sense that Mommy's attention was performative, designed to impress the supervising social worker rather than genuinely connect with them. When Rebecca missed 3 consecutive visits in February because she was dealing with personal issues, Emma stopped asking when Mommy was coming, and Ethan stopped saving his artwork to show her. The personal issues, according to Maria, who still kept tabs on Austin's social circles, involved Rebecca's complete breakdown after Jake's arrest for securities fraud in January. She'd lost her job at the marketing firm after a series of absences and emotional outbursts, and was now living in a studio apartment across town, surviving on unemployment benefits and what little help Ashley was willing to provide. Jake himself had become a cautionary tale whispered about in Austin's business community. The federal investigation had revealed a sophisticated scheme of using investor funds for personal expenses, including the Cabo trip that had cost Rebecca her family. He'd been sentenced to 4 years in federal prison and ordered to pay back over $2 million in restitution he didn't have. The glamorous lifestyle that had seduced Rebecca away from her children had been built entirely on stolen money. But Rebecca's struggles felt distant from the warm bubble of contentment that our rebuilt family had created. Emma was excelling in 1st grade, her teacher noting how much more focused and confident she'd become. Ethan had started soccer and was making friends with an enthusiasm that had been dampened during the chaos of his parents' disintegrating marriage. Patricia had blossomed in her role as primary grandmother and co-parent. She attended every school event, helped with homework, and provided the kind of unconditional love and stability that every child deserves. The twins called her Abuela, Mama, recognizing her as the mother figure who'd never let them down. On a warm spring evening in May, almost 8 months after the custody hearing, I was grilling burgers in the backyard while Patricia helped the twins with an art project at the picnic table. The scene was so perfectly domestic, so filled with genuine happiness, that it took me a moment to recognize the woman standing at our back gate. Rebecca looked like a shadow of her former self. Her clothes were clean but worn, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail that emphasized how much she'd lost. But there was something different in her eyes, clarity that hadn't been there during the chaos of her affair and breakdown. "David, could we talk?" she asked quietly, not wanting to disturb the children's concentration on their watercolor paintings. Patricia looked up sharply, her protective instincts immediately engaged. "What do you want, Rebecca?" "I want to apologize," Rebecca said simply, "to all of you. I want to ask if there's any way I can earn the right to be part of their lives again." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or desperation, but found neither. This wasn't the frantic woman who'd begged me to take her back when Jake abandoned her. This was someone who seemed to have finally accepted the full weight of what she'd lost. Rebecca, you've built a life that doesn't include the chaos you brought into it. Why should I risk their stability for your peace of mind? Because they deserve to know their mother, even if she's flawed. Because I've spent the last 4 months in therapy learning how to be the person they needed me to be all along. Because I finally understand that being a parent isn't about what I get from them, but what I can give to them. She gestured toward Emma and Ethan, who were completely absorbed in their artwork, their faces bright with concentration and joy. "Look at them, David. You and Patricia have given them everything I couldn't. But I'm still their mother, and if there's any chance, I can add something positive to their lives instead of taking away from it. I want to try." Patricia stood up slowly, wiping paint from her hands. "What exactly are you asking for?" "Nothing that isn't earned. Nothing that puts them at risk. I want to start over completely, to build a relationship with them based on consistency and their needs instead of my wants. I know I lost the right to be their primary parent, but maybe I can earn the right to be someone they trust and love." Emma looked up from her painting and noticed Rebecca for the first time. Mommy?" she said uncertainly, as if she wasn't sure whether this quiet, humble woman was the same person who'd promised them so much and delivered so little. "Hi, baby," Rebecca said softly. "Your painting is beautiful. Thank you," Emma replied politely, then returned to her work. It wasn't rejection, but it wasn't enthusiasm either. It was the careful politeness of a child who'd learned not to invest too much emotion in promises from this particular adult. Ethan looked up next, studying Rebecca with the serious expression he'd developed during the difficult months of our divorce. "Are you going to stay this time?" The question hit Rebecca like a physical blow, but she didn't flinch from it. "I hope so, sweetheart. But I understand if you need me to prove that first." That evening, after Rebecca had left and the twins were asleep, Patricia and I sat on the porch discussing what we'd witnessed. The woman who'd spoken to us wasn't the selfish, impulsive person who'd abandoned her family for a fantasy romance. But people can fake change when they want something badly enough. "What do you think?" I asked Patricia. "I think my daughter finally hit bottom hard enough to crack her delusions," Patricia said thoughtfully. "The question is whether the change is real or just another manipulation. The kids seem okay around her, but not eager. They're protecting themselves. They remember what it felt like to hope Mommy would show up and be disappointed over and over again. It'll take time before they trust her with their hearts again, if they ever do." Over the following months, Rebecca proved her commitment through actions rather than words. She attended every supervised visit, arriving early and staying engaged with the children's activities rather than checking her phone or watching the clock. She asked about their schoolwork, remembered their friends' names, and slowly began to rebuild the foundation of trust she'd destroyed. The breakthrough came on Emma's 6th birthday. Rebecca had asked permission to attend the party, not as a host, but as a guest who would follow Patricia's lead and my rules. She arrived with a single, thoughtful gift, a journal where Emma could write stories and draw pictures, something that showed Rebecca had actually been listening when Emma talked about wanting to be an author. When Emma hugged her spontaneously, after opening the gift, Rebecca's tears were genuine and quiet. It's the kind that come from real gratitude rather than self-pity. For the first time in over a year, she looked like a mother who understood that her children's happiness was more important than her own emotional needs. The supervised visits eventually became unsupervised afternoon outings, then overnight stays every other weekend. Rebecca had to earn each privilege through consistent behavior and the children's gradually increasing comfort with her presence. It was a slow, careful process that prioritized Emma and Ethan's security over Rebecca's desire for instant forgiveness. Today, 2 years after that devastating custody hearing, Rebecca is a regular but secondary presence in our children's lives. She'll never be their primary parent again, and our marriage is permanently over. But she's managed to become someone they trust and enjoy spending time with. She's learned to be grateful for the relationship she has, rather than resentful about what she lost. Patricia still lives with us, still serves as the steady maternal figure that grounds our household. The twins call her Abuela Mama and call Rebecca simply Mom, a distinction that reflects the reality of who's been there for them consistently. Rebecca has accepted this hierarchy because she finally understands that earning love requires more than biology. As for me, I've learned that protecting the people you love sometimes means making difficult choices that others will judge harshly. Some people still think I was too harsh with Rebecca, that I should have given her more chances or been more forgiving of her mistakes. But Emma and Ethan are confident, happy children who know they can count on the adults in their lives, and that's worth more than anyone else's approval. Love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice you make every day, in small actions and big decisions. Rebecca forgot that for a while and paid a terrible price. But in the end, she remembered, and our children are better for having a mother who finally learned what it means to put them first. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. This one hit the mark. You won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.